Welcome to the deep dive, where we really try to cut through the noise and get to what's actually going on. Today, we are strapping in for a look straight into the future of Formula One. We're talking 2026. Massive regulation changes are coming, and it feels like everything's about to shift. But it's not just technical, is it? The strategic games, well, they've definitely already started.
Oh, absolutely. There's huge anticipation, for these new rules. But yeah, behind the scenes, there's some incredibly shrewd maneuvering happening already among the top teams. And this deep dive, it's really all about one of the sport's, let's say, most cunning operators, Toto Wolff, the Mercedes F1 boss.
Exactly. We want to peel back the layers on these comments he made recently, pretty surprising actually, about who he sees as Mercedes' biggest threats for that 2026 season. So we'll unpack what he said, look at the strategy behind it, and then, well, there's this underlying factor, this challenge Mercedes is facing that could kind of flip the whole script.
Yeah, and our insights here, they're coming straight from an analysis of his comments. Specifically, they were reported in a recent YouTube video from soymotor.com. The title was something like, Wolff sees Aston Martin and Ferrari as threats for 2026.
Yeah.
It gives you a really fascinating glimpse into how the F1 paddock works, how much is bubbling under the surface years before we even see those cars hit the track.
Okay, let's dig into it then. Toto Wolff. Hugely influential figure in F1, right? And he's made these bold predictions for 2026, his picks for rivals, Ferrari and Aston Martin, which is interesting. But maybe more interesting is who he didn't mention, like, hello, Red Bull,
Yeah.
the reigning champs, and McLaren, who've been looking really strong lately, just not on the list.
And the context here is key, isn't it? He made these comments to an Italian newspaper, La Gazzetta dello Sport. Now, if you follow F1 closely, you'll know Toto Wolff is exceptionally smart about his media stuff, very strategic. He's known for, well, tailoring his comments depending on who he's talking to, praising the Italians to the Italian press, the Spanish to the Spanish press. You get the idea. It's PR, but it's clever, managing narratives, building goodwill, a bit of diplomacy, but definitely with a strategic goal.
So talking to an Italian paper, it's maybe not a huge shock he's talking up Ferrari, but he didn't just mention them. He really laid it on thick. He said Ferrari against Mercedes would be wonderful, a classic. He's picturing this incredible challenge, Lewis and Charles versus Kimi and George, and even said, I have no doubt this duel will happen. It almost sounds like he's willing it to happen. What's the game for him there, talking it up like that to the Italian media?
Well, it works on a few levels, I think. First, it absolutely taps into that historic rivalry. Fans, especially Italian fans, love that stuff. It builds excitement. And by praising Ferrari, he's flattering them, sure, but he's also kind of elevating Mercedes by setting them up as the worthy opponent in this classic battle he's predicting. So any future Mercedes win against Ferrari feels bigger, right? More significant because it's against this legendary team. He's shaping the story way in advance. But then he also brought Aston Martin into it. Less history there, maybe, but just as strategic. He specifically mentioned Honda's strength, linking them to Aston Martin. That wasn't just a throwaway comment. It's recognizing a serious potential competitor.
Okay, so what's the real story here? Why these teams specifically, if we step back from the media strategy for a second, from just a pure F1 logic point of view, maybe these choices actually make a fair bit of sense. Let's talk McLaren first. Why might they struggle with these new rules, even though they look good now? Wolff leaves them out. Why?
Yeah, that's a really good point about the customer teams versus works teams. McLaren buys their engines from Mercedes, right? They don't build their own. So in 2026, first year of massive new rules, especially engine rules, the 50-50 split between combustion and electric power, that's huge. For a customer team, integrating that new power unit, packaging it perfectly, that's a massive challenge. It's just not the same as when the engine rules are stable and you just develop the car around it. That link between the chassis and the power unit is absolutely critical in the new era. A works team like Mercedes or Ferrari or Aston Martin with Honda, they control both. That's a big advantage. McLaren has to make their chassis fit whatever Mercedes gives them. It'd be, frankly, quite surprising to see a customer team fighting for the title right away in 26. Historically, that's tough.
Okay, that makes sense. And then Red Bull, the dominant team right now.
Yeah.
Champions, conspicuously absent from Toto's list of worries for 2026. That feels like a really big omission. Why ignore them?
Well, Red Bull's taking on something enormous, aren't they? They're building their own engine, basically from scratch. Red Bull powertrains working with Ford. I mean, look, building a competitive F1 power unit from zero, that is just an immense, immense task. Even for Red Bull, with all their resources and talent. History tells us new engine makers usually take years, sometimes many years, to get competitive. Remember Honda's early hybrid struggles? Renault. And the whispers in the paddock right now, the word is that Red Bull powertrains, Well, they might not be strong right out of the gate. People are saying they're maybe a bit behind schedule, facing some big hurdles, so Wolff not mentioning them. Probably not an oversight, more like a calculated guess about where they'll be in 2 years.
So filter out the newcomers like Audi, Cadillac, teams like Haas, Williams, Alpine, probably not title contenders right away. Suddenly, Wolff focusing on Ferrari and Aston Martin looks less like just playing nice with the press and more like, well, a logical assessment of who's likely left standing at the front.
Exactly. And that connects to another really interesting rumor doing the rounds in the paddock. There's this strong feeling, a pretty widespread belief actually, that Mercedes has a significant head start on their 2026 power unit. They've apparently been working on it quietly for a long time, and the early signs are supposedly very, very good. So if that's true, maybe Toto is actually, in a way, looking for rivals because they expect to be really strong, maybe even dominant again. So framing it as this big fight against Ferrari and Aston Martin, it manages expectations, maybe throws rivals off a bit, and makes any potential dominance seem like a hard-won battle, not just a walkover.
That's that sort of secret language of F1 intelligence, isn't it? These little signals. But how much do teams really rely on that stuff compared to their own hard data? How can they possibly know much about rival strengths or weaknesses this far out? It can't be perfect info, surely. But they must get clues somewhere.
Well, it's definitely not perfect science, no. But they piece things together from different places. You have technical meetings with the FIA sometimes where teams discuss rules or ask for clarification. And you can learn things there, sometimes without anyone needing to reveal anything. Like if one team asks a really detailed question about a specific concept, something technical, and another team, maybe one that's further ahead, has already looked at that same concept, found it didn't work, and moved on, well, that tells you something, doesn't it? It signals that the second team is way ahead on the learning curve. They're asking about yesterday's news, basically. It's subtle, but it helps gauge where everyone is. Yeah. And then, there's always just paddock gossip, whispers, especially around testing. None of it's concrete proof, but you add up all those little bits of info. And teams moving engineers between them carry knowledge, too, even indirectly. It's a very competitive little world.
Right.
Okay, but here's the twist, isn't it? Despite all this positive buzz about the Mercedes engine for 2026, they seem to have this really significant internal problem right now, this correlation issue between their wind tunnel, their simulations, and what actually happens on the real track. That sounds like a fundamental engineering nightmare.
It is. It's a huge issue, a real albatross, like you said. Basically, it means they can't fully trust their own tools. The computer models, the simulations where they design and test parts, they aren't matching reality on the circuit. And if your design tools are giving you bad info, how do you develop effectively? You can't rely on the initial designs, so they have to fall back on, empirical methods, basically slapping new parts on the car during race weekends or tests just to see if they actually work, because the data they had beforehand wasn't reliable. It's incredibly inefficient, costs a fortune in time and resources. It just slows everything down. It's a big part of why Mercedes has seemed a bit lost at times in the last couple of seasons. They're learning on track, not fully trusting the factory data. It's like trying to bake a cake with a recipe that gives you the wrong measurements every time. You just end up guessing. And Toto Wolff himself, he actually said they had to, quote, throw in the trash a new rear suspension they brought to a race because it just didn't perform like the simulations predicted. That's a massive admission, isn't it? For him to say that publicly shows how deep the problem might run.
It's a huge admission, yeah. Especially from him. It really underlines how serious this correlation problem is. For a team like Mercedes, famous for its engineering precision, it's a major, major hurdle. And the stakes. Immense. If they haven't cracked this fundamental issue yet, in the final year of the current rules, and Wolff's comments suggest they're still fighting it, then you have to ask, what happens when they have to design a completely new car for 2026? From a blank sheet of paper. If your core development tools, your simulator, your wind tunnel data aren't trustworthy, designing a winning car becomes incredibly difficult, maybe impossible. You could have the best engine in the world, but if you can't build a chassis that works with it properly because your tools are flawed, well, that engine advantage disappears pretty fast. The folks back at Brackley must be feeling pretty nervous about that because the best engine doesn't guarantee a win. The whole package has to work.
So this sounds like, maybe a massive headache for Mercedes, yeah, but potentially a real opening for their rivals, like Ferrari and especially Aston Martin. Now they've got that Honda Works deal. That's totally different from being a customer, isn't it?
Absolutely. This correlation issue could be Mercedes' Achilles heel. And meanwhile, you've got Honda powering Aston Martin from 26. And the word is, Honda's taking maybe a very different approach on the battery side for the new power units. Remember, that electrical component is half the power now. It's critical. So if Honda delivers an engine that's even just, more or less at the level of Mercedes, as the source video put it, Aston Martin could be a huge threat. Think about it. Top-tier engine, hopefully a chassis team that can trust its tools. That's a powerful combination. Plus, all those rumors about them trying to attract serious talent, like Adrian Newey, Enrique Cardile from Ferrari, Ben Cowell, the Mercedes engine expert. Even if only some of that is true, shows massive ambition. They're clearly gearing up to build a complete package around that Honda engine.
Right. And you mentioned Aston Martin's sporting director, Andy Stevenson, talking about dedicating loads of time to 2026 planning, although his big reveal was apparently about sorting hotels and flights, which maybe wasn't the technical bombshell we were hoping for.
Yeah, sometimes the reality of F1 logistics isn't quite as glamorous. But it does just show, doesn't it? The sheer scale of preparation involved for all these teams. Every single detail, even the boring stuff, is being locked down now for 2026.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together for everyone listening. What does it all mean for 2026? Toto Wolff's comments about Ferrari and Aston Martin, they seem like smart strategy, playing the media game. But also, when you look at the F1 landscape, maybe logically sound, too, given Red Bull's engine project and McLaren's customer status. He's setting the stage, managing expectations, maybe even because they think their own engine is really good. But the potentially huge story underneath all that is this internal Mercedes correlation problem. That seems key.
That really feels like the crux of it, doesn't it? Mercedes might well have a leading engine for 2026 based on the rumors. But this fundamental engineering challenge, not being able to fully trust their simulation and wind tunnel data, that could be the big equalizer, their Achilles heel. It could genuinely open the door for teams like Ferrari and Aston Martin to step up and mount a proper challenge in 2026, maybe in a way we wouldn't expect if Mercedes solves it. It's a good reminder that F1 is never just about having the best engine or the best aero. It's about the whole complex system working together flawlessly. And if the tools you use to design that system are flawed, well, even the best parts might not add up to success on track.
Okay, that's our deep dive for today. But here's something to think about as you go. We've talked about Mercedes' potential hidden problem. Given all the technical complexity and the intense secrecy in F1, what other fundamental issues, what hidden challenges might the other top teams be grappling with right now? Things that could completely reshape that 2026 pecking order in ways we just can't see from the outside. Worth considering.